we'll have this discussion.
Discussion? What discussion?
This is a discussion combustion.
Coming to you from Denver, Colorado, this is Discussion Combustion Podcast with your hosts, Kevin Batstone and Arthur Raw.
Oh, I was going to say I've got my kids home alone tonight. My wife is taking part of our staff out to dinner, and so they're like doing a movie and mac and cheese on the couch, so they may make a cameo appearance or not. Hey, we'll see.
I would love to see Kid again. I mean, she was a little doll, and yeah, that's no problem at all. If the kiddos jump in, man, that's what was meant to be. That's all good.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. That's life
for sure.
Well, cool, man.
What movie you got them watching right now, or do you even know?
Yeah, they're watching. They're stringing together Frozen and Frozen 2 right now. So
okay.
So they're on a binge fest right now.
Totally. Yeah, we didn't let them watch TV for a few days knowing this was coming up, and it was like, all right, we're doing dinner and a movie, kids.
Yeah.
Yes. So you line them up with about a three hour window. Yeah. So we got plenty of time. And for all the listeners, we got Dan Shirley, who is actually our really good friends, Craig Christopherson. It's his wife's sister. So that's how the association happened.
Brother.
Brother. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time with words today. So just pardon me on this episode. It's going to happen multiple times. But I met Dan in Jamaica for the first time. And this is, I have to start with this because it left an impression on me to this day. When we were by the pool for the first time and you removed your like, covering to your swimsuit, and the boy whipped out like a Speedo-esque. And you were killing that, by the way. But I was like, this man is on another level with confidence. And like, I love that. That stuck with me, man.
Yeah. I was just wondering why no one else was wearing a proper swimsuit.
Is a proper swimsuit a Speedo? Is that what I'm gathering here?
Well, it was like a booty shorts Speedo sort of thing. And like, Doug was killing it. All right.
It'd be really alarming if anyone saw me in one of those. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I wore shorts a couple weeks ago. People had to put sunglasses on. My legs are pasty white. I'm not prepared for that.
Well, where I live up here in the woods, we usually just go skinny dipping. So when I'm at the public pool, we put another layer on. And but you can't buy those swimsuits around here. You got to go to like specialty stores in Mexico for those.
You got to get that, south of the border goods. And you're up in the north of the border. Where are you at exactly? Where are you coming at us from? Because I see that gorgeous wilderness over your left shoulder there.
Yeah, so I'm tucked up here in northeastern Minnesota, like right between the Canadian border and Lake Superior. So they call that the Arrowhead of Minnesota. It just comes to a little point up here. So as the crow flies, we're about 15, 20 miles from Canada. And we're right on the edge of a wilderness area. It's called the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. So it's a big series of lakes and like trails. They call them portages that connect the lakes. So we're sitting right outside that wilderness area at the end of a 25-mile gravel road. But I got internet.
25 mile.
That's quite a
25-mile gravel road.
Yep, that's right. So Highway 61 runs right along the north shore of Lake Superior from Duluth up the shore to the Canadian border. And Highway 61 was made famous by Bob Dylan. He actually grew up what they call the range or the Iron Range, which is in northern Minnesota, where there's a lot of iron mining done in the past. And that's where Bob Dylan grew up. So the famous Highway 61 is what we live off of. So you just turn inland and we go 25 miles away from the lake, and we're up here in the woods. And yep, we no neighbors.
That's getting better than that, man.
And so I have a little inside information on this because I obviously talked to you a bit about this subject, but you kind of have like a little bit of a compound. I wouldn't say a compound, but you have land where there's multiple housing units, and people can come out there and help volunteer and work, live on property, and help distribute canoes to get people to these borderlands, the wilderness or wildlands. What do they call it?
Yeah. So it's a wilderness area, which is a federal designation. There's a variety of designations on our public lands. There's like state parks, there's national parks. Wilderness is just one of those designations. So it's a federally recognized wilderness area. And those different designations kind of dictate how the land is managed. So like at a national park, for instance, which you guys obviously have several of in Colorado, like Rocky Mountain National Park, for instance, people can drive in there and there's like hiking trails and there's probably some lodges and those sorts of things. Wilderness area is kind of like the most hands-off type of management. There's definitely wilderness areas in Colorado. These are places that don't have roads. They don't have like maintained campgrounds. They don't have stores. They don't have lodges. They have like maintained trails, and that's basically it. You can't have motors in them. You can't have bicycles in them. So it's a really kind of like the most kind of like basic wild area. And so it's federally protected.
Like, no gears. You can't have motors, no gears. So people are like going in there on these canoes and basically just can you have fires out there too, or like what?
Yeah. Basically, the restrictions are you can't have everything is just like human powered, basically.
Okay.
Bicycles, actually, even though those are human powered, they have enough gearing and stuff that they break the rules for wilderness. So you can ski into a wilderness, you can hike into a wilderness, you can canoe into a wilderness, you can ride a horse. That's sort of a legacy thing, but so we're on the edge of the wilderness here, which is the Boundary Waters Canoe Area is the name of the wilderness. It's kind of a mouthful. But yeah, I think it's fair to say
Boundary Waters Canoe Area. So basically the mode of travel through this particular wilderness area is by canoe. It's just a bunch of lakes. So there are small lakes that are small to medium to large. They're all varying sizes, and they're connected by trails that are called portages. And so it's kind of like a backpacking trip, but you paddle your canoe, you come up to a trail, you carry your stuff across the trail, you get onto the next lake, you paddle along the lake, you go, to another portage, go across that one, et cetera, et cetera. And then, when you're done for the day, you find a place to camp and you camp out for the night. And that's kind of how it works. So it's a really unique wilderness area, and it's actually the most visited wilderness area in the United States. Really?
So it's quite popular. Yeah.
And you've went out there a bunch of times. Have you went out there yourself and explored? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I went on a couple of trips recently. I just took my 3-year-old son on his first father-son trip. I've taken my 6-year-old Kit, my daughter, on several just father-daughter canoe trips. And then we go on family trips, go with my friends. Definitely been out there a lot. It's our backyard. So yeah. And you were mentioning, it's like we kind of have this compound here, like right next to the wilderness. And I think compound is a fair way to describe it. Okay. I've got like my house. I'm in my house right now. I got a log home. We have a couple of we have a staff house, which is across the way, and we've got like a staff bunkhouse, and then we've got a workshop and like storage facility, and then we have our storefront where our customers come in. So we have a general store where we sell souvenirs. We sell like t-shirts and sweatshirts. We sell camping equipment. We sell light groceries. We have like a little convenience store. So we got like a walk-in cooler. We sell like pop and beer and that kind of thing.
I got to get some of those hats, man. I know you said that they're discontinued, but the hat that you hooked up Craig with, where it has like all the lakes on it and it's like the trucker style, I would love to get my hands on something like that, man, because it's cool gear, man. It's really cool gear. And I know Kevin had something here.
Well, I'm looking at, because I'm a visual person, so I got the map pulled up here. I'm kind of looking at this area that you're describing, the Superior National Forest. I'm assuming that's the area we're dealing with.
Yep.
I mean, it looks like, all I can see is just lakes. I mean, you guys are littered with lakes up there. Looks really fantastic. I got to get up there, man. I've never been to that part of the country. I've been just about anywhere else. And so when I come up there, if I were to come up for a visit, what would that look like? Like cruising down this 25-mile gravel road I link up with you. I say, hey, man, I want to do some canoeing out here. You know, how do I get started? What does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. And we, no experience necessary. So it's first timers come up all the time. Couple of ways to do it. We have a national forest campground right here on site, right on the lake that we're on, Sawbill Lake. Some folks just want to camp in the campground, and that's like a campground that, you've maybe been to in Colorado. You can drive right into the campsite, it's outside of the wilderness, and camp out. And for some people, that's the right thing to do. And you maybe go out on a canoe for a day, go on like a paddle for a day or something, and then you camp in the campground. Other folks will come, and especially for first timers, we can do kind of like an all-inclusive type of deal where you just show up with your clothes, and we can pack all the camping food for you and all the camping gear, have that all set up, and you show up, we'll run you through. This is all the stuff that we set up for you. This is how it works. Answer your questions, look at a map, and kind of put together what makes sense for a route. And then you head on out, you park your car here, and, we're located right on the lake. So you just go down and off you go. So, there's details about it. There's permitting that is required because it is such a popular destination. They limit the number of people that can go on a trip every day, starting from the different, what they call entry points. They're basically like trailheads. But yeah, man, we help people like you all the time, just kind of like put together the logistics. So
that's great. No, I really like what you guys are doing over. That's cool. And obviously, this is prime months for your business, right? Summertime, people are doing vacationing, kids are out of school. They're looking for places to visit. I grew up in Wolfboro, New Hampshire on Lake Winnipesaukee. So, I was familiar with the summer tourism growing up in America's oldest summer resort. And there was a lot of that would come in, and the flip side of it in the wintertime, right now, everything's frozen over. And I'm curious as to what that looks like up there in the winter. So I'm sure they're harsh, ice fishing. Where do you guys kind of turn your attention when everything's just completely frozen over and colder than hell?
Yeah, for sure. And I just mentioned real quick, we're not the only game in town. We're one of many canoe outfitters that are sort of like surrounding the wilderness. So it's a big economic driver for the region. Lots of people come up here, and there are a lot of businesses like mine that help support people going out on these trips.
That's terrific.
But anyways, yeah, as far as winter goes, we don't have any winter aspect to our business. Some places do. They'll like guide winter camping trips, or dog sled trips is a pretty common thing. We do live up here year round, but it's real winter. It gets frozen. It stays below freezing, oftentimes below zero all winter long. We have like several feet of snow on the ground. The lakes are all frozen. We do a lot of the winter is kind of awesome for us because we're not working so much. So we do a lot of recreation, go out on the lake, go skiing, lots of cross country skiing. Some people do, do a lot of ice fishing, and that's definitely opportunities for that. Snowmobiling, you can't snowmobile into the wilderness area, but in the region here, lots of snowmobiling. It's a pretty big thing. Yeah, it's just really peaceful. It's everything is white, and when I moved here from Montana. That's by way of New Mexico. I grew up in New Mexico, and both of those places have winter, but neither of them really have, at least the places that I lived, have winter that just stays cold and frozen and snowed in the entire time. There's usually like some freeze thaw, it's like in Denver, you guys will get some snow, it'll melt, whatever. Up here, that like doesn't happen. It snows and it just stays cold.
So do you have like 2 to 3 feet of snow just sitting on your property, like for that entire season? Like, I mean, how deep does it get? Like, what are you going through?
Oh yeah. We get like a couple 100 inches of snow, and it doesn't melt. And so once we get our first snows, like in October, the ground gets covered, and we don't see it again until like April, May. So we basically have like 6 months of complete snow cover. The lakes are frozen for at least 6 months. We've on the compound here, there's a lot of area that I need to plow. So I've got a skid steer with a plow, and I have like massive piles of snow that just like get piled up throughout the season from plowing.
That could be fun to do sledding with, or, kind of have some fun with it, make the best of all that snow. Cause I remember, again, growing up in New England, very similar conditions to where you're at, not quite as cold. I mean, we would get some negative temperatures, but like when it would snow around Christmas, it would not leave. It was cold. That snow would stick around. I was in central New Hampshire, so kind of similar conditions. And then they ran out of places to put the snow. So, the big, they'd get these dump trucks full of it, and they would just dump it on the frozen lakes because they didn't have anywhere else to put the snow from the parking lots and the streets. It's like, where are we going to put all this?
Yeah, exactly. That is certainly a thing that happens like down in town, like along the shore. We just kind of keep pushing it back, and it's pretty neat up here because sometimes we get a little like on our high horse. We go into town and it's like, oh, this is like city snow. It's like dirty and stuff. It's like mixed in with car junk and whatever. But up here, there's not really so many cars and de-icers and things that are put down on the road, so it's all like really white and clean. It's great for the kids to play on, so yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and so I know I had talked to you a little bit about this when we were on Island Time, but the opportunity that you have to live on this beautiful land and be disconnected from a normal society routine, right? Like waking up, driving to work, and your children too, and the value of living, because it's a lifestyle. Like, yeah, you do this as an income, but it's also a lifestyle that you maintain, and you kind of get to live and work at the same time while being surrounded by, like, God's land, and for lack of better words, right? So like that kind of energy that you're surrounding yourself on a daily basis is a unique opportunity. And I know I had mentioned that a little bit to you, and you were aware of that, so like what, I forget what you were doing before you got into this, and like, how thankful are you that you have this new lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You're exactly right. It is 100% a lifestyle. So we are off the electrical grid up here, so we don't have any utilities that we're hooked up to. So we generate all of our own electricity. So we basically have our own little like power plant, which needs to generate enough power for approximately the equivalent of about 5 households. We, are on a well. We have septic systems, stuff like that. So we have a pretty complicated physical plant, which takes a lot of maintenance and time, and frankly, brain space, just like worrying, and babysitting. We heat with wood in the winter, and we have a pretty elaborate like heating system, but it's just a lot of work and takes a lot of like attention. So that is definitely a part of the lifestyle. You can't just like put that down. That is something that you're just like having to be aware of and dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And then, yeah, our business is seasonal. So we kind of like make hay when the sun's shining, right? So we're open 14 hours a day, 7 days a week for like about 6 months a year. And that's me and my wife. We are business partners. We co-own the business together, and we also 100% raise our kids together. There's no daycare, at the end of the Sawbill Trail. So yeah, we basically just split the day. My wife typically works in the morning, and I hang out with the kids, and then we, switch after lunch. And I work, at night, and she's with the kids. But, so our lives are just kind of like intertwined with our work. But it really is the most amazing experience for us because we get to have our kids with us all day, every day. We are our own bosses. We get to dictate our own terms. You get what you put into it. You work hard, you kind of like reap those benefits. And it's just not something that you clock in and out of. But there's a lot of benefit to that. So I feel super grateful for this opportunity to be here. This business, Sawbill Canoe Outfitters, this is our 66th year of operation. My wife's grandparents founded the business in 1957. And they grew it, and then her parents took the business over from them after about 30 years and ran the business. And my wife grew up here. Her and her little brother were born and raised, kind of like my little kids are. And then she moved away, and we met in Montana, where we both went to the University of Montana, and she actually went to law school there as well, and had a really successful law career. And I was working as a chemist for a biotech startup. And then her parents were kind of like getting ready to retire, and Claire and I were at a little bit of a crossroads in our careers. Mm-hmm. And it was like, yeah, let's move back up there, and we'll be the next generation. So yeah, my wife's the third generation. And, you know, I didn't have a long career doing research, but I had a long enough career to know that working for yourself is, you know, it's kind of hard to go wrong with that.
That's the dream, right? To be in control of your time and money, and to do something you love. You get out of bed every day and say, man, you know, this is a family business. We're running this thing. I'm working for myself. I don't have to answer to anybody. That is the American dream. That's awesome, man. And you're out there in nature's beauty. You're taking it in. You're out there in one of the most beautiful parts of the country. That's awesome.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, no 2 days are alike. You know, I'm never bored. People talk about bored. Bored is not part of my lexicon. I always got something to do. If I don't have work to do, I've got something to fix, or a bike to get on and ride, or, you know, go walk around outside or something.
I mean, okay. So, when my folks moved out of Denver, I was like around 8 years old. We moved out of the city, Park Hill area in Denver, and moved to rural Parker, Colorado, which is like 10 miles east of Parker. So we had 5 acres, dirt roads out there, and that was different from the city. And I know that's small. 5 acres is small compared to what you're dealing with out there. However, walking that land and helping maintain it and valuing, you know, the ground and making sure things are running right, those were extremely important values that I learned as like an adolescent, and actually appreciating having space and not being in the city. It was valuable, especially now looking back at those years. It was just, there was something about having space to move around, feel the dirt underneath you, smell the different seasons, experience the different flora, watch how spring comes, because it's so cool. Like that's kind of what I love about your winter. And I get excited thinking about it, because right now everything's super green and beautiful, and, you know, it's bustling. There's a lot of people. However, this is going to come to an end like it does every season, and you got to be winter ready. Like you have to be prepared for this oncoming cold, you know, this freeze that's about to overtake the land, and, you know, having the gear to do that. And then seeing, like, I love seeing the seasons change, and I'm sure it's very dramatic out there. Like if I'm sure you've taken some pictures where it's like, here's my view, my house, my log cabin during the summer, here it is during the winter, and it just looks like a completely different world, you know. And there's like there's a value to that where it's fun to experience, and it's almost like a like you're like fortunate to be able to experience and see these different seasons and be a part of the world, because people are so caught up in the screens, right? I guess this is where I'm going with that, is like people are caught up in the screens. They're always, you know, looking at the phone, trying to find dopamine in that way. However, you're making sure that the power is running. You're making sure that the snow is cleared. You're making sure you have enough canoes. Like, valuable busy time is always better than like just blank filling time, like filling it with like screen scrolling. So I know there's a lot of things I'm saying there, but like, I'm a little envious, because it just seems like such an amazing like lifestyle. And I know it's hard work, but like it's rewarding at the same time, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, it is different from like a more traditional career where you have like a weekly flow where you're like, you know, I'm going to work Monday to Friday, I got my weekends off, you know, our flow is more seasonal due to the nature of the business, but it is connected to the actual like seasons of, you know, of nature. And so you really are kind of in tune with that. A lot of the work that we do kind of corresponds with the season. Yeah, we're stacking the firewood and getting it ready because, yeah, like you said, if you're not ready, it's unrelenting. And it is a nice flow. You know, I work 7 days a week, you know, potentially, you know, we're basically always working, even
does
if
it
we're
feel
hanging
does it feel
out.
like work though, or like you're just being productive?
Yeah, I mean, it depends, you know, it depends on the tasks. Some things happen where I'm just like, God damn, this is like a zero sum game. You know, I'll have like something break, and then
Yeah.
it's a dirty job to like get it back to operational, and you're just like, man, that was like kind of a sucky way to spend my time, because like I didn't really
All right.
improve anything. I didn't gain something. I
What's
just like
the
got it back to
dirtiest
where
job?
it was.
What's the dirtiest job on the compound?
Oh, dealing with like sewage issues, septic issues,
I
for
had
sure.
a feeling.
Has
I
to
had a feeling.
yeah.
I mean,
That's
I've been
done.
elbow deep in the shit for sure.
Oh shit. Okay.
He's been in the shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not pleasant. You know, we had leach fields and stuff, and you'd smell the swampy shit water coming up, and that's never fun. But something I could relate to, you know, again in New England, we would prepare for these winters, and we'd have to stack wood, right? So I'm curious, because what we would do is we'd have it brought in. You know, I lived down in kind of a dirt road on a lake, and we'd get a cord and a half of wood. You know, they'd dump truck out in the yard, and my job was to go out there and stack that shit. And it was hard work, man. But, you know, wood stove power, you know, we had fans that would move that through the house. I know you said you rely on wood to heat your home. I don't know if you cook with it as well or how that works, but do you cut down a lot of trees in your wilderness, or how do you kind of process your wood and get it ready for the wintertime?
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, there's a lot going on with our business and just like life. So sometimes throwing money you can't always throw money at something. Like the shit is overflowing, and like as much as I would just like to pay to have that dealt with, like I don't have time for that. Like I need to deal with it like right now. And there's a lot of other things that you just, as being a responsible business owner, you can't throw money at because it doesn't pencil. But sometimes paying somebody else to do something to alleviate some of your time, you know, because maybe it's not like a high impact project for your time, makes sense. And so with our firewood, we kind of do it that way. So we don't necessarily go down and cut trees and process from that point. We typically have like it delivered already bucked up into pieces that are ready to burn. And then we stack it from there. And we do about 15 cords a year.
Wow.
And so yeah. Oh, yeah.
How much is a cord?
A cord's about a dump truck full, like a quarter-ton dump truck, if I'm not mistaken.
So cord is like a whole dump truck. So you got like 15, you got a convoy of dump trucks worth of wood that you burn annually.
Yep. And so we try to keep about 3 years in advance. So we have it sitting for 3 years, 2 to 3 years before we burn it. So I should send you guys some pictures of my wood yard where I just have.
I want to see that.
A stacked cord is like 4 foot by 4 foot by 8 feet. So 4 feet tall, 4 feet wide, 8 feet long is a cord.
That sounds right. Yeah.
And we've got a pretty big staff here, you know, seasonal staff, you know, we have about 15 employees. And so we try to leverage, you know, some gaps in their schedules to help stack that wood. So we don't, like Claire and I don't stack all that wood. We like utilize our summer staff to help do that.
And that's a lot of work, man. Moving that wood. I mean, as we all know, you're getting splinters in your arms. And of course you got to have some indoors too to burn, right? You don't want to be running out there at night to grab logs too. Do you have like one of those? Because we had like this big circular ring that we would fill up with the wood that would sit next to the wood stove. Like you got to have a place that's like convenient in the house where you can just keep stoking the fire.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in my house, I've got a wood chute. So it's like a trap door, open it up, and it's just like a big chute down into the basement. We just dump cartloads in there. And then it opens up right next to the wood boiler. And I have another wood boiler in the staff house. And we actually have one year-round staff person who lives up here and works for us full time. And so she lives next door, and there's a wood boiler over there. It's a big job that she does in the winter, just hauling wood from the pile and then like stacking it all up next to the boiler, having it ready to go. Yep. And so the way our heating system works is, it's not like a fireplace that's just putting off heat into the house. And like you were describing, Kevin, with like the fans and whatever, we actually have a boiler system. So the wood is heating water. So it heats water, and then that flows through like registers, you know, in the wall. So you have like a thermostat, and instead of that coming from like a propane furnace or something like that, it just comes from burning wood. And all of our we have like a massive central heating system. So all of our buildings are interconnected. So we have like water lines connecting all the buildings for the heating. A couple of our generators are liquid cooled. So those go into our heating system. It drives the efficiency up on the fuel consumption of those. So they're generating electricity, and the heat is also getting pulled off to be used to heat our buildings and like create hot water for like showers and stuff.
That's terrific. That's extremely resourceful for sure. I never really thought of it like how a wood boiler would work, but that makes sense. I guess, I guess the logistics of it is getting that water to run through your compound and whatever that looks like. Because is it coming from one area that then supplies the whole compound, or is there multiple boilers around the property?
Yeah, so we've got 3 boilers. We've got a wood boiler in my basement, a wood boiler in the basement of the staff house, and then we have a propane boiler as like a backup over in our store building. And then we have a massive 1,000-gallon water tank, which serves as like a heat sink. And then also we have these 2 generators that are also generating heat. So we've got heat kind of coming from a lot of different points. It's all tied together, and it basically just flows to wherever it needs to. So if you have a thermostat calling for heat, like your bedroom, let's say you have a thermostat in there and it opens up and it says, all right, we need heat in here because you have the temperature set at 70 degrees, it drops below, it turns on. The water just flows to that spot and heats that room.
That's awesome.
But instead of it just being sort of like a singular house, it's just it's just kind of blown up. And any extra heat just sits in that big tank, that 1,000-gallon water tank. So that's just like a big hot tank. And anytime there's heat needed somewhere, it kind of flows out of there.
So is there like a part in the property where that tank is where like the snow doesn't stick to the ground then? Like you have like your one little oasis where you go tanning during the middle of winter?
Yeah, so that is inside actually. That's indoors.
Okay.
It's sitting next to the generators. So that's a very warm room. But we do have an oasis. We have a wood burning sauna, which is really awesome. It's on my back deck here. So it's got its own wood stove in there. It's not connected to the system, but you fire that thing up, you get a 200-degree sauna going. You have it's 10 below outside. You get a 200-degree sauna. You go in there, you step outside, you get like an over 200-degree temperature difference. And that's pretty bomb.
That's pretty alarming. Yeah, that's a temperature shock right there. But that's therapeutic almost too. Coming out of that heat and then feeling that negative temperature, see the steam pouring off your body. That's awesome.
I'm just getting hella cozy vibes. I'm like tempted to be like, hey man, can I just come out there for like 3 days during the middle of winter, and just come. I would need to come longer than that, honestly. Like I would have to be there for maybe a week, but like, I'm not going to invite myself. So we can talk about this later. However, like it just, there's that feeling, and I'll do work too. Like I'll do work. All right. It's not free stay. All right. I know how to use these shoulders, but
this guy.
There's something about like just being disconnected. Like I crave it. I crave it a little bit because it's like you're doing something that is primal, right? It's like looking into a flame, and even though you have modern technology that helps assist what you're doing, it's still self-contained. And within that is this feeling of awareness of self reliance. And like, I crave that. Like as much as I'm tied into doing the podcast and, I love doing this every week and being in the city and my lifestyle, I love it. But I feel like at some point in my life, I have to take a sabbatical where I just completely disconnect and just immerse myself in nature. And so like, I love that you're doing that. Like there's part of me that's like, oh, I gotta get there. Like I want to go to the wildlands so bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, and your internet's great too, right? It's not like you're completely out in the middle. I mean, your internet stream is better than some people we talk to on a weekly basis. So it's like, you're still in touch with technology, but you're still living that disconnected lifestyle, which is great because you're getting the best of both worlds. You can tap in, you can tap out. It's up to you.
Oh man, I'm tapped in for sure. I mean, you talk about scrolling. I do a fair enough amount of scrolling on my phone up here. Can't get away from it, but it's true, and actually Arthur, there's a lot of data. There's scientific rigor around the health benefits of being in the wilderness, being in the outdoors. And so what you're feeling and craving, I mean, that's real. And there's real benefit to that, and you absolutely should do it. And you'd be more than welcome to come and visit us here. You know, ask Craig about it. You know, he and Jamaica came out here a couple winters ago, and they came for like right around Christmas or something. And actually he was here during a warm spell. So it only got down, it was like 25 degrees rather than like 25 below.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a real neat thing to do, and people should do it. And you know what? I like cities, you know. My wife and I, we travel a lot. We've been to a lot of different countries. It's one of our favorite pastimes is traveling. And since we live in the woods, when we travel, we typically seek out cities. Like I'm all about going to Denver or going to Amsterdam or going to Paris, going to Budapest.
I mean,
you know,
it
all
makes
those
sense.
places.
Yeah, it makes sense. You know, like I'm kind of craving that because I'm not in that, and then vice versa. So that totally makes sense. And it's just, it's exciting. No, I'm definitely going to follow up with you on that. And I'm going to make sure I come out there, man. I'm going to make sure that I come out there and come do that at some point, because it's just, okay. And I know I talked to you about this, about the like attractor fields and how, conversations create attractive fields, smells, memories, environments. And so I'm going to touch on the environment part. And being in a natural environment where you have nature around you is healing. It's so healing. Like, look, we're recording in DTC. We got this path, and it's a paved path. It's a groomed park. You know, they maintain it frequently, and it still helps bring me to this place, because like, even though I'm walking on a path, I can look up and I just focus on the trees and the skyline, and it's gorgeous. And I just feel blessed, fortunate, and thankful to even have that path, you know. But when you really remove yourself and you're on the dirt, you're on the grass, like you're smelling nature around you, and you're hearing it and experiencing it, like you're being bombarded with all of these positive attractor fields that help sustain and perpetuate life in a positive energy. And that's what I tell people all the time. I'm like, do you go on regular walks? Like whenever anyone is like talking to me about the woes of life and how they're getting beat down by their job or whatever it may be, like, do you go on walks? Because that's healing. It's so healing. And like when you're out in the borderlands, the wildlands, like you're describing, and there's no motors around, like that is, it's just even more of that, because it's just pure life and nature. And like where we came from, where humanity came from, was the wild, you know. And there's something like, it's almost like
it's primitive.
It's alluring. Like it's like a fantasy of being like, so, but in the same time, like when you're out there all the time, because you need variety in life. You need to taste different flavors. That's important. You know, the palate could get boring, you know, if you keep having the same flavors all the time. So, you know, getting into the city, and like, I understand the crave to do that too. And it's interesting just to kind of talk about that whole dynamic of energies in cities, nature, and how we find our own balance to find happiness at, you know, individually. I feel like that's a really cool area to kind of talk about, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, we're super fortunate for the ability to be in that, all of, you know, the various healing properties of being in the outdoors and being away from all that 60 hertz, like electrical fields and stuff that are generated by just the built environment in cities and stuff. So if I'm going to go walk the dog, I'm just like walking down a road that like there's nothing around, and that's just like what I have at my disposal. And yeah, you get used to that, you know. My mind isn't blown every time I do that, for sure. But it is something that I try not to lose sight of, in terms of like the extreme like privilege that I have to just be able to like walk out the door and have my kids just walk out the door and just like be in that, and not really have to like put any effort into like seeking it out somewhere, because it is good for you. But the variety is definitely important. And I would say that's, I lead a very charmed life. So I can make that decision to like go on that trip down to Jamaica or whatever, or travel in the winter when we're not so busy. And, just like do that, get that variety, do what we need to do to kind of switch it up, which is really great. It's really great.
Well, it's good to mix it up, man. And I was going to kind of ask you too about your kids, because I know when I was young, I got so used to living in the woods, being on a lake that, and my parents listen to this, they're going to remember anytime like we try to go to the city, I didn't want to go. I just wanted to stay in the woods. I was a country boy. So I'm curious, with your kids, they obviously love the woods, being outdoors. But when you take them into the city or maybe take them on a vacay to a place that's new to them, do they love it? I mean, is that like something that they get excited for, or they just want to kind of be nestled into the forest?
Well, it's funny to see them in the city because they are a little bit of like country bumpkins, that's like, this is a sidewalk and this is like a crosswalk. And you need to like look both ways, those sorts of kind of basic things are not like part of their day-to-day life so much. So it's kind of funny to see that. And they're just like, I mean, they get kind of like thrilled by the mundane of somebody who lives in the city. Like, oh, like there goes a trash truck, like things that are in the books that we read, and they actually see one in real life, that kind of stuff, like a fire truck or whatever. So they, it's endearing to them to like see that new stuff. But it is a little overwhelming for sure. There's like a lot of activity around, especially if you're in a busy place. It's not like they're never in a city. We go down to town in Grand Marais and, our daughter's in school and, we go down to the cities and stuff, down to Minneapolis and whatever. But it's not their day to day. Their comfort zone is more in the woods, and you can really see that whenever like friends come over and visit, because like our kids are just like, that's like they're in their element. They just kind of like dive right in, like, here we go, like into the woods, and the other kids maybe are a little more timid around that.
Yeah. I mean, how couldn't you be though? I mean, that's the thing. And life is all about experiences. And it's interesting as I grew up, because I grew up in the city and then moved out to a rural area. And that was a bit of a culture shock to me. I mean, I was a minority in my preschool, first grade and stuff. And then it was lily white out in Parker, like, and that was weird to me at first, so it's good to have those different experiences and immerse yourself in different cultures and opportunities to appreciate what's around. Because if you think about the infrastructure in a city, it's like a massive engineering obstacle that is a beautiful synchronicity that also is littered with chaos and problems. And the fact that it works, the fact that humanity has been able to comprehend the needs and foresee some needs and maybe miss some too. So there's areas where it needs to step up. But it's really interesting infrastructure. And I mean, you even have an infrastructure at the compound, as far as the heating and stuff goes, and, how cities are built and the highways and plumbing, and like everybody uses this stuff on a daily basis. But do you sit there and actually appreciate the fact that like holy logistical and, engineering and infrastructure, like it's a massive amount of human power and energy, hundreds of thousands of people, brain power, physical labor, that went into building the metropolitan, whatever metropolitan you live in. There's a beauty behind that too, because it's like almost like you're relishing and human ability to overcome nature. Right. But we reset by going back to it. So it's a duality. It's an interesting duality, society and nature, and how it all needs to coexist. And it's fun to think about that. I'll just go on a rant, I'll go on these rants that like, I don't have a point necessarily. I don't have an end. I'm just thinking out loud, because life should be pondered upon. And I think that's a healthy thing to do.
Well, it's true that not everybody in the world can live like I live. Not everybody can live in a rural setting and be like somewhat self-sufficient. There's just not enough square footage on the planet for that to be. There needs to be some density in order for there to be enough space. You got to build up. And I think it's a really interesting concept and a necessary one, obviously, to create some level of density. It's like I do a lot of reading and thinking about like sustainability and things like that. And it's like, the answer to food shortages, the answer to issues around the climate, the answer to some of these like existential things that are going on is not like only eat venison that you hunted or only eat wild caught salmon. Like that's a privilege that's reserved for kind of a minority of the population. The reality is we have a lot of people that need to be fed, and we have a lot of people that need to be housed, and you can't sustainably do that through those things I just listed. You actually need economies of scale, and you need efficiencies to do large amounts of things, and that's where the human ingenuity, like you're saying, kind of really comes in. And that's how we're going to solve some of these problems. Because otherwise, it's just not practical. Like, yeah, Dan Shirley, that lives in the Superior National Forest, can be very self-sufficient and sustainable and have a very small footprint. But that's not scalable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's really going to take some like ingenuity to like kind of overcome some of that. And we can do it. I am amazed by cities and just like the human ingenuity that you're talking about. It just really is, especially when you do spend a lot of time out in the woods. And I have a unique view into some of those infrastructure problems. Like, my sister, she lives in Denver. And she's like, oh my God, all the pipes broke. Like, how does this even happen, in the winter?
And we love Jamaica. Jamaica, we love you. Okay. But, we have to call her out. And like, okay, sorry to interrupt, but when we were in Jamaica, all of the people at the resort did not believe that her name was Jamaica. Like they thought it was a hoax. They thought it was some kind of slander. And so that was just kind of fun. I had to call her out a little bit here. Craig, I know you listening too, man. We love you, brother.
Yep, for sure. Shout out to my sister Jamaica. She's my buddy.
Good people.
Good people,
man.
But she lives in a city and she doesn't really think about the way some of these things work, and most people don't because you don't have to. And so maybe we don't always appreciate what it takes, the engineering and the ingenuity that it took to like kind of provide what we have.
That's so true. And I think you're hitting on a point that a lot of folks get kind of, we get so used to living in the city and having all the amenities at our fingertips and getting pissed off, and the internet goes out like, I can't believe this. I need my internet, and it's like, wait a minute, let's dial this back, because again, I came from the country to the city. So I went from the country life, like kind of what you're doing, not quite that extreme, but close, to the city life. So for me, it was like a 180. And now that I'm in the city life, every time I do get back to the country life, I forget how much I miss it and how much it's like rooted in reality of, this is the basics. This is where it all began. And we take our, our high-end plumbing and, electrical systems and heating and cooling and all that for granted until you're out there actually turning wrenches and building these, wood boilers and seeing what it takes to actually be self-reliant and efficient on your own. It's night and day for sure. Like you said, it's a yin and yang balance. There's a place for it for everybody. Doesn't necessarily fit everybody's lifestyle, but man, I think at some point in due time, I'd love to get back to living that way. With the internet capabilities, we can podcast from wherever, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be in a city.
It's true. So what is your favorite tool to use on the compound? Is it the snow removal? Is it a chainsaw? Is it a firearm? I'm sure you got a lot of options out there.
Yeah, I've got all the above that you just listed. I do have a skid steer, which is kind of an amazing tool because it can do a lot of different stuff. It can plow the snow. I just got a big mower attachment for it, which can mow down things up to like a 4-inch diameter tree. So I've been playing with that thing. Yeah, so that's been kind of fun. I like that. That's fun.
Skid steer, yeah, that's got to be the toy of the compound.
Totally.
A toy with attachments. I mean, come on. Who doesn't love some attachments?
A toy with attachments. Easy, ladies. We're talking skid steers here.
Look, it's like the government adding amendments. It's a great time to control things.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But sometimes the more simple things can be, whenever you need to bring out the more fancy tool or the more specialized thing, it's like, that's not necessarily the best situation to be in. But yeah, on the topic of guns, we do a fair amount of hunting in the fall, like do some grouse hunting and that kind of thing. I do a fair amount of grouse hunting, go for walks in the woods, and that's always fun.
What kind of hunting?
Grouse. They're like
grouse.
Yeah, they're the birds. So they're kind of like little chickens, almost similar.
Are you using buckshot to take them down? Is that what you're hunting them with?
Yep.
Yeah. So just your typical 12 gauge or whatever.
Yeah, 12
Remington
gauge
or whatever you're rocking.
Yeah, 12 gauge is probably overkill, but yeah, you definitely you use like a 410 and be fine. But yeah, it's kind of fun.
Oh yeah, it's a great time getting out there and shooting some birds. I haven't done a lot of bird hunting. I know a lot of folks out here like to do quail and stuff like that. And I haven't thrown my hat in that ring, but it's a good opportunity to learn and get out there and learn firearms and take down some birds, and especially if you're going to utilize the animal for its food. Absolutely, it's great. Now, are you hunting any big game out there as well?
There's a fair amount of deer around, and when I was living in Montana, I did more deer hunting and elk hunting. But it's just it's a different scene here in Minnesota. Certainly people do a lot of whitetail deer hunting out here. It's usually more like from a deer stand. It helps to have like private property. In Montana, it's like more wide open spaces. So I kind of got away from it. And frankly, since I moved here, when we moved out here, we had our first child like almost immediately. So it was like my wife and I went through a lot of like life changes all at once. So like I kind of reset my life in a lot of ways. It's like we got married, we quit our jobs, we sold our house, we moved, we like started, well, we didn't start this business, but we got into like, being business owners. We had a kid, we like, all these things that like, people throws their one individual thing would throw your life off. So it's now that my kids are 3 and 6, I'm getting a little bit more spare time because, little kids take a lot of work. And so some of those things that like hunting, which takes a lot of time, some of those individualized tasks have kind of fallen by the wayside. And maybe we'll start like picking some of those back up here.
So I would like to kind of focus on something here though, because this is an important point that we really drill home frequently. We like to reiterate this. And I feel like you just explained it, like, having a kid, your first kid, changing your job, picking up a new job, having a new lifestyle, like all these things are major challenges and probably made you and your wife feel very uncomfortable. And through that and through sticking with it, now you're reaping the benefits, and I want to drive this point home to everybody listening in. Nothing worth it is going to be turnkey. Nothing worth it is going to happen overnight. You're not going to get instant satisfaction from anything that is actually worth it. You're going to have to do things you don't want to do, like waiting in shit, literally, or whatever it is. And you're going to have to do things that you don't want to do to get into the position that you want to be in. And it sounds like your family has been doing that. And I congratulate that, because it's not easy to fundamentally change how you're living and also how you're looking at living too. So I just wanted to echo that point and drive that home a little bit, because if you're sitting at home right now and you're feeling really comfortable and you don't feel like you've been challenging yourself, then you're failing. You got to go challenge yourself. You have to do something that you're gonna get a failure out of. Like you have to lose a little bit. You have to learn the hard way. And if you're not doing that, then that's the weekly challenge this week, is to do something that's a real challenge, and that you question your capability. Because I'm sure when you and your family were going through that, you and your wife, there were times where you're like, can we do this? You know, and you just stuck with it. You know, that's when you know that you're doing the right thing, is if you question your capability to really be able to achieve it, then you're on the right path, and you just have to keep going. Just go a little further. You want to quit? Well, guess what? Keep going. You know, I love drilling home that kind of stuff, though, because there's so much success that comes from overcoming adversity and mental hardship, or whatever you feel like is a challenge to you. Face it head on. Face the challenge head on. I just had to echo that point there really quick.
Yeah, totally. I mean, my wife, Claire, is like an amazing person, and I'm like so fortunate to have met her and have built a life with her. She is like so smart and capable and kind and steady and just like cool, and is just like an amazing partner in this journey for sure. And
you're still crushing on your wife, bro.
We're about to have our eighth anniversary here next month, and like,
congratulations.
Thank you. And no, I would say our relationship is just like stronger all the time. We are business partners. We are co-parents. We're lovers. We are totally in it together. And like, I owe that success in large part to the person that she is. And so it's really amazing. You know, maybe you should have her on this show sometime. She's really an amazing person. To.
Shout out to Claire.
For sure. Claire's the bomb. But you know what, one thing that I would just kind of like add on to your shout out to folks about, you know, maybe get a little uncomfortable from time to time. You know, I think another thing that's really important is that people think about spending a little bit of their time giving back to their community, volunteering a little bit of their time. That's something that I've done more and more of since we moved up here. You know, when you live in a small community, you got to wear a lot of different hats because you just have less people to do all the things that need to be done, you know, whatever that happens to be, whether it's through like organizations or like local government or whatever it is, you just have less people to do it. So you end up, you know, I do more things here than I did when I lived in Montana in a bigger city because there's just more people around. So I'm really grateful for having kind of been pushed into that since I moved here. And we really value that, because when you get involved with helping other people and sort of giving back to your community, you have the opportunity really to learn about yourself, but you get to learn about your community and how it works. And then you also get to help impact your community. You know, when you are involved with things, like your values start to become your community's values. Like when you get involved with things that make your community tick, then what's important to you start getting expressed throughout the community. And I think that's a pretty powerful thing to do. And I think people that are like peers of ours, you know, around this age, people are like really protective of their spare time. And they say, oh no, like 4-day work week, like it's all about me. I got to have my spare time. But you know what? Like, actually, sometimes you got to like sacrifice a little bit, because organizations need people to like volunteer, or else they will not be there. You know, you got to start like expressing your values into the community in like a meaningful way. You got to sacrifice to do that. And I think that's really important place for people to step up.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, man. You know, that's something that Art and I are continuing to develop here at Discussion Combustion, get involved with the community, helping out where we can, you know, get involved with 99 Hearts and some of these great things. You know, Kylie Burr's here locally doing some fundraising events that we're going to get involved with. You know, that's kind of one of the things we learned as this journey continued to roll was, how can we give back? How can we help? You know, we try to help folks around the holidays, you know, Christmas dinners, things of that nature, man. And, you know, one of the questions we usually ask people is, if you had one piece of advice to better humanity, what would it be? And I think you just echoed that entire question before I even asked it, because I really think that carries a lot of weight in itself, is giving back to the community, whatever that may look like, just giving some time, you know, like you said, work 4 days, 5, 6 days a week, whatever, get out there, get active for a little bit, even if it's just for a couple hours, right? What can you do to help the community out? Help thy neighbor. It goes a long way, and it really just kind of sets the example that I think we need in this time of 2022. A lot of division, a lot of anger out there. It really goes a long way to just give some time and kind of help your community out a little bit.
Yeah, Dan. And, you know, we feel like you kind of answered a question before we even asked it to you, but to be fair, we got to ask you the question. If you could give one piece of advice to humanity, you know, so everyone can be better tomorrow, what would that piece of advice be?
Yeah, I mean, I think being a lifelong learner is important. You know, be seeking out information and learning, and try to divorce the dopamine hit of certain types of information from just actual objective information and learning. And, you know, that kind of feeds into some of like the tension and division out there, but also just, I think, remaining curious about whatever the topic and just continuing to learn. I think the more that you can keep your mind open and learn about things, the better, and being kind of open to that. Because I think it's easy to be closed. It's easy to take a stance and kind of keep that stance. That's an easy place to be, and it's easy to reinforce that. And it kind of feels good sometimes. It's harder to keep yourself open and kind of like seek things out, have those conversations. I think that's what we need for sure.
I love that. And to put my 2 cents on the dollar that you just threw down is it's so true, because the moment that somebody caps themselves and feels like they don't have anything else to learn, then you are limiting your experience in life. The more open that you can remain to obtaining new information and challenging your own belief system, there is a strong energy field of courage and awareness and neutrality that is associated with being open to adjusting your thought process. The second you get stuck in a thought process and you feel like that is the only way, you're kind of getting lost at that point in time, because life is forever changing. And if you cannot change with the times, then you will be left behind. And to remain coachable and understand that there is always something, a new value that it could be comprehended and valued. Like, I love that mentality. That's really where I want to stay. I feel like I'm there now. I'm sure I'm complacent in a lot of areas, and I, you know, am solidified in some thought processes, and maybe I'm unaware of which ones, but I would like to think that I'm staying open-minded and willing to hear things and look at the lens of life through whoever's talking to me, because this is the human experience, right? Like, we're alive now, and we're fortunate to even be able to understand each other's conversation, put together sentences, like the billions of synapses that are happening between the three of our brains, and then let alone all the listeners, to comprehend a conversation and then also give input back. Like, we're blessed to even have that. So I love what you said. I could go on a long rant there. Kevin, what do you got?
Well, I mean, I think everyone's hitting on some good points here for sure, especially talking about, you know, what you were saying, Dan, about remaining coachable, you know, never, you know, shut the door to being able to learn new things and, you know, visit new opportunities. I think that it's always a reminder for me every Wednesday when I sit down and talk to great people like yourself, that there's always more to learn. You know, it's not done. There's always a different way to look at things, you know, like you said, through the lens of life. Everyone's got a perspective. Everyone has an equal voice, and everybody has equal pull in this world, right? It's just how you choose to look at it, who you want to spend your time with, and, you know, where do you want to take it on your personal goals and aspirations, for sure. And look, man, I think you're doing some great stuff up there. You know, next time I'm up in the Minnesota area, I'd love to come up for a visit, come check out some of those lakes, maybe do some canoeing. And this is usually
Me too.
Yeah. Let's take a DCPC trip to Minnesota, go do some outdoor wilderness exploration. I love it, man. I could be more excited to be involved with something like that. But this is usually the part of the show, Dan, where I'm just going to ask you, where can people get in touch? Where can people come check you out? Where should they go? And we'll include all that in the show notes down below, of course.
Yeah. So, you want to check out what we're doing up here at the Canoe Outfitter. We're Sawbill Canoe Outfitters. We got a website, sawbill.com. We have a blog, and the blog archive goes back to 1996. You can look back and see my wife when she was a little kid on that blog. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Sawbill Canoe Outfitters. So check that out. And that's kind of like my quote unquote professional life. Dan Shirley, hit me up. Let's chat. Oh, look, I'm getting a visitor right now, actually.
Oh, it's Kit.
Oh, look at that.
It's Kit.
Yep, this is my daughter, Kit.
Hi, Kit.
I don't know if she could hear us. He has headphones on.
Oh, that's true.
I got headphones.
Tell her
on.
we say hi.
They just said hi to you. You want to say something to them? Say hi, honey.
That's epic.
I'm enjoying the movie. I'm getting tired, Dada.
Okay, I'll be out in just a couple minutes, okay?
Oh, she's a little sweetie.
That's great. Nothing better than family.
Well, yeah, for sure. Yep. My famous 6-year-old wilderness canoe traveler right there. She can do it. You can do it.
Yeah, man. Such a pleasure having you on. I was grateful to meet you in Jamaica and share that moment that we had in the shade in the bungalows. I think you know what I'm talking about. Great times. It was great to reconnect with you. Craig is my brother. Jamaica's my sister. That makes you my brother too. So your family in my eyes. Whenever you're in Colorado, you have a place to hang out. And absolutely, I know Kevin and I would absolutely love to come check out your compound and land out there, man.
I think we make that happen. That's a 2023 thing. I think we come out there for a visit. And if you happen to be in Denver, between now and then, we'd love to sit down and have a beer, maybe have it on the show, it'd be great. So once again, want to thank you for your time, hanging out with us tonight. I know you got some family duties to do, and the work never stops, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun. You guys are more than welcome. Let's definitely make it happen. And I will be out in Denver, so we'll swing by. Be cool to check out the studio.
Yeah, man.
Oh, absolutely.
Come on in.
You have an Own It pass to our studio anytime you want. You're welcome in. And all the listeners out there, you already know from the bottom of my heart, and I mean this, be good to yourselves.
You deserve it.